You may have seen me in the last 40 years encouraging you to come down and help plan your neighborhoods or help make a change or put your voice in on different issues. I did that long before I was elected. And the truth of the matter is sometimes it works out well, sometimes not so much. We had a situation, one of the examples I remember is when I worked on the Bethany plan in the 80s. The community decided the best thing to do when Laidlaw was extended past Kaiser was to run it up to the front door of PCC Rock Creek. And that's the way the plan was approved and was put in. When it got closer to that point, a developer came in and said, well, I can make more money if it goes down to West Union. And as you know today, it goes down to West Union. And now the county and PCC are going to have to split the cost of moving the front entrance. So since it doesn't line up with Laidlaw anymore, it's going to line up with 178. And that's a fair piece of money. But once again, somebody over here making a bunch of money is not always good for the whole community. So I just want to press ahead that this is a very important feature, and I've tried to push hard on it. We've worked on a lot of stuff, worked on trying to fix lately gaps in sidewalks. You know, it doesn't do your kid anywhere any good to walk to school if there's a 500-foot gap where he's got to walk on the white line. So we need, I think we need to focus on the commission. We've got a change here coming up that I think we can make. We can focus on one that looks at the community and residents and taxpayers and not so much at special interests. And I think we need to work on that quite a bit more often. You want nice neighborhoods with sidewalks, with trees. We don't have a tree ordinance. I push for a tree ordinance. The board majority doesn't like tree ordinances, and so we don't have a tree ordinance. And our two big issues coming up are basically workforce housing for folks who make, you know, under $21 an hour, of which we have about 140,000 in the county as of 2016. And 72,000 of them can't live here because there's no place for them. And if they buy a house, it needs to be in the or unit or condo. It needs to be in the 200,000 to 350,000 range. As you know, none of the builders in the county are currently terribly excited about that. So we're about 20,000 units short, which is probably why there's 72,000 people who are running to work every day. And that ties into our issues with transportation. Anyway, I hope you'll feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope you'll see the way for helping us to keep pushing ahead with a new board, a new commission, one that takes a little stronger look at what's good for the people who live in the county. So that's my pitch. Okay, have the vote.
Oh, God.
Thank you for timing that. May I ask you for a four-minute signal? Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, she doesn't live here. She doesn't live in
Pam?
CPO1.
Pam Trace is the other candidate for Washington County Commission.
No, I'm talking about
She's
Pam.
going to introduce herself.
She's just doing the time.
I like
Jim,
I would like
this has nothing to do with anything. Thank you
But
very
wait,
much.
why is she timing if she's nobody?
Everyone is welcome to the CPO meeting,
But
including you.
She represents the district too.
She doesn't live in CPO1. She doesn't live in County Commissioner District 2.
That doesn't matter, Jim.
Don't worry, Chrissy,
Would
I'm
somebody,
in the district.
it's my first CPO meeting, so I
Yeah,
live in
CPO meetings are open to everyone.
Exactly, but I mean, why is she trying to act like she's
Yeah, I'm on
one?
the field, one, and then 30, and then.
All right,
Meet Jim Kate.
carry on.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Pam Treese, and I'm running for Washington County Commission District 2. I appreciate the fact that you've taken your time tonight to be here. I wanted to give you a brief overview of who I am. I've lived in this area my entire life. I was born and raised in Portland. My husband Marty and I have raised our children in this area. And my daughter Hillary and her family currently live in Washington County and in District 2 as well. So I'm pleased to have them here with me. My history, like I said, I've been a public school teacher. I've worked for the electric utility company. I currently am running a nonprofit that focuses on the economic development of the Washington County area. I've had the experience of working right at the junction of the public and private sector, and I appreciate the education that I received in that process from a lot of different people, including our elected leaders and the private sector. I'd like to say that we have issues that we need to face in Washington County. The primary issue is our traffic congestion. There's no question that we all have trouble getting from point A to point B, and we have trouble getting our products and services from point A to point B. I've served on the ODOT Area Commission on Transportation for the last 3 years. I was active in advocating for HB 2017, the transportation bill that gave us the opportunity to invest $5.4 billion in our state at large. And I have sat on the Washington County Futures Study. And I need a drink of water here really fast. You see, that shouldn't come out of my tank. So with that, I want you to know that transportation is a key issue. I have the skills, and I want to make sure that we address that at the commission level. The other issue that's of key importance is one that Greg mentioned, and that is our housing issue. That housing issue is combined with our transportation issue. As Greg mentioned, we have people that travel a long distance to get into Washington County to work because they can't afford to live here. We need to address that issue, and with my experience, again, I commit to making sure that we do that at the commission. We also need to have a continued focus on public safety. We need to make sure that our unincorporated area feels as safe as we possibly can, and make sure that we utilize all of our dollars focused on public safety appropriately. Lastly, we have to focus on making sure that Washington County stays the economic engine of the state. We have a very low unemployment rate at 3.5%, that's a good thing, but at the same time, we have a poverty rate of over 10%. So what we've got is a big shift between what, we've got people who are employed, and we've got a lot of people who are either underemployed or not employed. And we have to make the commitment to match up our opportunities for skill development and career opportunities together so that people can get good paying jobs. Last, like I mentioned before, we've got those 3 issues. I also want you to know that I am highly committed to this area. I've, like I said, raised our family here, and I love living in Washington County. I'd like to read a statement that I put together today. As part of my introduction, I'd like to set a positive stage for tonight. Last night, Greg, you accused me of partaking in pay-for-play politics. And I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to categorically deny that. That was at the CPO 7 meeting last night. I've had a long professional and community-focused life and career that I'm very proud of. My campaign and the support I've received reflects 50 years of dedicated and ethical work in this region. No campaign contribution that I've received reflects a commitment of votes in any way, shape, or form. And Oregon's campaign finance laws allow for complete transparency for the public about my contributions and about anybody else's campaign transactions. Greg, I've known you for 5 years, and I know you as a good and decent person. Frankly, I'm a little surprised and I'm disappointed by the accusations and by the overall negative tone of the campaign. And tonight I'm pledging to run a clean and positive campaign for the duration of this election cycle, and I hope you will do the same. Thank you to everybody here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And I meant to write this on the board earlier, if we've got a pen. Thanks to Oregon's wonderfully open campaign finance laws, you can all find out who's donating to who. And I'm not going to write out the web address because it's long and ugly, but if you just Google ORSTAR, run by the Secretary of State's office, and every campaign has to make weekly reports to ORSTAR about what they've received and what they've spent. And it takes a little while to figure out the interface, but if you really want to know, it's worth it.
If I could have about a half a minute to respond, because I didn't want to
Sure.
impugn her.
Yeah, neither of you took the full amount of 5 minutes.
We may not agree on every little thing, but the important thing is, I guess I was trying to emphasize, is that if you go to Orstar, you can see who's putting the money in, and there's a little way you could click on it. It's not the easiest in the world, but you can follow back to see what that group that gave money is and who's on it and what it is. Citizens for Good Government, for instance, is Arbor, and they're kind of subcontractors. So, you know, whatever the name is, you can follow it on back. That's just an example. I don't know if you've received any money from them or not, but I'm just saying, go to Orstar, and you can learn a lot by looking at where the money's coming in from as to, you know, what's at stake. And so, yeah, I didn't mean to impugn your integrity at all. I'm just trying to get people to go ahead and look at the Orstar. So.
Great. Okay, we ready for questions? Okay, since Greg opened, I will ask the first question of Pam. Well, you get 5 minutes to answer all three, so I'll just go ahead and read them all out, and you can go
I
first.
just spoke. I'm happy to let
Okay,
Greg go first.
all right. In an effort to increase the available land for housing development, Washington County's been approving expansion to more slopes. And we all know about that around here. This increases the expense of infrastructure, which leads to higher costs of new housing. It also is leading to downstream flooding and other problems. If elected, will you seek to limit the expansion of residential development to the upland areas? What other solutions do you propose to deal with the high cost of housing? Greg?
Okay, how are we doing this now?
She said for you to go first.
But just on the good question.
I think
Oh, that's right. I did say, I'll read them all.
Okay.
How important is it for us to preserve Washington County farmland so that we can eat locally grown food? What can Washington County do to encourage that? And the third question is, will you support a Washington County tree code to preserve some of the tree canopy in the county?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do them in reverse order because I think that's the most amount of time for each one will be from the first that way. Well, I support a Washington County tree code. Absolutely, I have for years. I'm sitting on a board with 3 people who agree that absolutely trees should not be protected. They're private property. And if any trees are protected, they need to be bought by the public. And so, in trying to put in a tree code, the answer has been no. And we've even had that member of that group of 3 said never again does he even want to see that brought up in public. So, while he said it. So, okay. And he's retiring, so it's probably okay now to talk about it this shortly. So I believe we should have a tree code, and I think in all cases, if you're going to protect trees, you need to give the landowner the right to get the same amount of structures as he would have had if he didn't protect the trees. That way it's not technically costing him issues. So that way it's an even keel. If you could build 10 units by cutting all the trees down, you should still be able to put 10 units in one corner or on half or on 3/4 and save the trees so you're not down a unit on. Preserving ground in farmland in Washington County, we're not making a whole lot of additional farm ground in Washington County. We kind of have what we have. Some of it might be overgrown, but the truth of the matter is we need to protect that as much as possible. I mean, I've heard people say, well, gee, you could go to Klamath County and grow stuff. Well, you could if you only wanted 25 crops. In this valley, we can grow 125. And that's not the same because it would be a lot more boring in life if you're down to 25 things to eat instead of 125. So we can preserve it. There's a rumor we need to have more ground to build on, and primarily we have to constantly have more till it's all gone. That's been the way it's been done in other places. Their housing costs even more than ours, and their traffic is worse. So you talked about building on the slopes. My experience with seeing houses built up on slopes is that those are nowhere near affordable. What we do have in this county, see when you have, let's say 12,000 acres of residential land and it's all built on, it's not really gone, it's still there. And you see those acres and they can be reused, just like a farmer can plant a new crop. I think we've all seen houses in our neighborhood that we're thinking, uh-oh, it's the blackberries or gravity, one of them's going to get that house. And that means that that house can be repurposed or replaced with some new, more modern units. And we have quite a bit of ground. If you go down TV Highway and look to both sides, you will see a lot of ground being used for storage, ground being used for trailer parking, ground being, so there's a few, what would you call them, malls that have seen better days.
Yeah.
There's not much in there, they're falling apart. They already have infrastructure. You will not have to build new roads for them. You won't have to put in new sewer, new water, any of that stuff. Because you're going to be able to make use of that property. If we could zone it for mixed use, you put commercial on the bottom, 3 or 4 floors above it, apartments, and you put elevators in. I was surprised, in Sherwood, they built an affordable house for, affordable building for older people. It was the only major building like that in town. It's also the only town with an elevator. I talked to the former mayor a while back, and she said, you know what? It's not full of affordable housing for older people retired. It's full of wealthy people who got tired of going upstairs to do something. And they got an elevator that takes them up, and there's no yard. So you can kind of see that there's a demand for that kind of thing, especially as we all get older. And you can do mixed, you'll do a mixture, you can do a mixture of rich and poor, but there's lots of places along TV Highway that can be renovated. It's time. I got a strip joint up here on Canyon Road. They have a shooting there every other year. And I brought a developer out to look at it. He says, I need 5 lots consolidated to have it be big enough. And that's where we need to be concentrating, not so much on the slopes. We need to go ahead and make use of what we got that is no good anymore. And unfortunately, right now, the county's policy is not to rezone those ever. And so some of them have 40 years old.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you. Chris, I'm going to give you 5 and then a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Why
you.
is she timing? Does she live here?
Yes.
she does.
I appoint her as timekeeper.
Okay, excuse me, I'm going to get started, please. Greg went from the reverse order, and I will do the same. Thank you for the questions. The first question that I'm going to address is, will you support a Washington County tree code to preserve some of the tree canopy in the county? And I learned this last weekend, talking to neighbors when I'm knocking on doors, about the value of the trees in their neighborhoods and how strongly they feel about the trees. And I support the concept of a tree ordinance, but I believe also your question was talking about the canopy concept of trees. And when you're looking at a slope, I've done some research on this, when you're looking at a slope for development, you remove the trees, and what happens is you increase the erosion possibilities and the flooding possibilities down below. And that's when you look at the history of the Forest Heights development, which is in Multnomah County, or for the most part Multnomah County, you see a lot of that effect, and I think we're suffering from that in our area right here. So yes, I do support that, and I do understand what that component is. There's another piece too, and that is our trees in our natural areas protect and cool the rivers and the streams so that our wildlife, our fish, and our habitat there can survive more effectively. So I participated in the Tree for All program and saw that firsthand. So I know how important it is to make sure that we do have a tree ordinance, that we protect our trees, and we look to what damage it causes when they are removed. The question about farmland. Number one, we have to protect our farmland. And while I love farm-to-table concepts and being able to eat local food, that's one piece of it, and it's a very valuable piece. But at the same time, we need to protect that farmland for the heritage that it provides, for the fact that it's an important piece of our economy in Washington County. It's an important piece for all of us. So yes, I believe in having the local food availability, and I love going to the farmers markets wherever they are, but at the same time there's other reasons as well that we need to look at when we're protecting our farmland. The last question is about, again, about the slope piece. And I'm familiar, and I've been reading about the Cedar Mill Flood Remediation Collaborative.
Right.
And I'm familiar with the work that you're doing there, and this is a joint group with Washington County. It's funded by Washington County, by Clean Water Services, and by Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, but brings a lot of different experts to look at what the issues are. And we need to pay close attention to that, and we need to bring that information to our citizens, so in turn the citizens can inform the commission about what their leadership role, what our leadership role should be as we move forward on those flood-related issues. This is a key issue, especially in this part of our area. You heard there was somebody earlier that talked about Willow Creek flooding. It's not just here, but it is in large areas. One last comment I want to make on going back and combining this with the tree ordinance is the fact that when I was knocking on doors south of Thompson Road and east of Salzman Road, the neighbors there, I had one neighbor say, "You've got to come with me," and walk me around to the back of the house to see the damage that had been done by the creek flooding that was a result of removing all the trees in the development. Now, when I went back and did my research again on why that happened, to get to density, the idea is you have to move and regrade. The issue is we have to be making those decisions early. We should be making those decisions with our citizens, and we should be making those decisions at the commission and informing our land use and housing team as to what the implications are and how they should move forward. The commission determines policy. The staff determines what the program is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's open it up. What time? This clock is not working, so how much time do we have for questions? We have until 8:15. It's correct.
Okay,
So we've got about 20 minutes for questions. All right. This gentleman had his hand up first.
So you both talked about the importance of creating more housing opportunities for people on the lower end of the income scale in the county. What specific concrete things would you do that would enable developers to build more housing for people? Or
Right now, I'm sorry, am I going first?
Go.
whichever.
Right now, I have been proposing for the last several years that what we do is look at some of that ground that we have zoned 40 years ago and seeing in case of commercial or industrial, which areas are in the bottom 20% of the rental per square foot. Because my feeling is that those are the areas that probably need to be turned to something more useful first. And I've asked that we could consider going in and rezone those for mixed-use development. Because I was saying, like the place up at the strip joint, there's like 5 owners, 3 different types of zoning all mixed together to make a group big enough to knock that down and put something in like an Orenco development. And the guy says, why would I go to the trouble? I can't, you guys are going to charge me to rezone it. I can't ask to rezone it till I own it. Why would I buy 5 of these lots up and hope to God you guys say yes? Why would I take that risk? So I think if we go out now and we find 500, 100 acres, 1,000 acres of areas that are roughed up and falling apart and are like cancer starting to grow in our communities, and change the zoning at our expense, that some smart guy will come around and go, hey, those 5 different ownerships, I can do something with those. And we're not going to subsidize our way into 2/3 of the people being able to afford houses here. And so let's give the market a chance to use that up. So we need to be looking at that.
Yeah. Pam?
Thank you for your question, and I think your question was what ideas do you have in relationship to affordable housing to increase the supply, correct?
Well, to make it economical for someone, developer, whoever would actually physically build.
Okay, there's a couple ideas. Number one, we have to ensure that there's certainty in the process. So we have to make sure that our permitting processes and all the processes that we are responsible for within the county, the timing and all the developer can depend on that, because that can help in terms of the cost of the project. Number two, I think that any new development should have a component of affordable housing in that development. Number three, I think that we should consider what the incentives and what the possibilities are for low-income housing when we're looking at developments. We also, at the same time, you didn't ask the question about homelessness, but I think we also need to be looking at what our shelter concepts are and how we're going to address the homeless issue as well. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Okay, that's, yeah.
Yeah,
Are you asking it of both candidates?
Yes, I think both candidates need to
Okay.
respond. We have a very large water project in progress. It's going to cost $1.2 billion. We'll be drinking treated Willamette River water by 2026, and it's going to happen. And we didn't get the vote on approving that project, I mean going to the Willamette, but it was done by the county commissioners in 2013, and that's what's currently going to happen. I don't think they have all their permits yet, but I see this as an opportunity because the Willamette River is not like pristine water comparable to the Bull Run water that we're drinking 70% of in our, the water we drink right now. So there are a lot of challenges, water quality challenges, that are being sort of soft-pedaled, downplayed in this lead-up so far since 2013. I see an opportunity. How do you see the opportunity, if any, as a county commissioner, to improve the quality of the Willamette River and to make sure that the treatment plant that is built at Wilsonville to replace or add to the one that's there, that treatment plant actually removes things like those personal care products and the medications that are part of that river, plus many other things. What can you do to help us be healthier?
Let's get insurance.
Gee, thanks, Greg. I think what you're referring to is the Tualatin Valley Water District Big Pipe Project that is bringing water out of the Willamette River. And in fact, I'm drinking Dasani water right now, by coincidence, that comes from that treatment plant. The cities of Wilsonville and Sherwood are currently get their water there. And we're on the right track here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So when I worked actually a little bit on the project with Tualatin Valley Water District, and I'm aware of the different options that they looked at in relationship to getting that water, whether it was Bull Run water and the cost that would be associated with Bull Run water, but because the city of Portland owns the water and had the right to charge whatever, looking at a pipe that went over to the Columbia River and brought the water in. So I believe that the water district and the elected officials that sat on that water district at the time made the decision based on the quality of the water that was there and the availability of the water. So I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. As far as what the commission does, I think is continue to monitor and to continue to insist that there is adequate monitoring on those water sources as they come from the Sherwood and Wilsonville area. I have not heard that there's any issue for the Wilsonville or Sherwood individuals or citizens at this point. Am I correct about that?
It hasn't been examined carefully to know whether or not there are issues related to that.
Okay.
And that's some strange
Cheers. I'm sorry, now I'm worried.
Well, that's the first time I've seen a bottle of water produced by that plant. That's Willamette River water, is that what you're saying?
The Dasani plant, the Swire Coca-Cola takes their water out of that
So they process that.
Let's
to
give
high
Greg a
quality.
chance to comment on it, and I don't want to get hung up on this one topic.
So the water district made a decision about where they wanted to get their water from. As Pam said, they wanted to get it from, I mean, we had a few choices, none of them looked good. You remember there was a time we were going to raise the dam up at Hague Lake for more water storage. What I found out after I got on the commission was that the highest level that we were proposing raising it, it would never filled up on its own. We were going to run a pipe up the river from one of our treatment plants to keep it stocked. Okay, I'm not sure that building a dam bigger than will ever be filled naturally is what we want to do. As it turns out, and it's complicated, that dam has to be replaced anyway now. So we'll be slightly bigger, but it won't be that big. But we have to replace it because otherwise when the big one comes, that's it. So everybody downstream along that's in big trouble. So we're going to have to see if the feds will spring for it. So far, so good. Our commission's worked hard and long to make that work. You're right, there are some things in the water it's hard to get out of. I assumed that when I took medicine that by the time it left my body it had been used up. Well, it turns out it's not used up. It's just as good as it went in. It's just their body can't hang on to it longer for 24 hours. So all of that's in the river, and we're monitoring that. We're trying to keep an eye on it. The truth of the matter is we're going to have to be prepared to do things differently with water. Las Vegas manages to capture 97% of the water they use and put it back in. And what they do is they pull it out, they use it, and then they go ahead and clean it up so it's as clean as the water already in the lake is, and dump it back in, and then it gets sucked out by the cleaner and gets run through again. And our Clean Water Services, of which I'm the director, the commissioners all are, we make something called ultra pure water. We make beer out of it. The first year we made beer with it, the state said you can't use sewer water to make beer. You need to do what we've always done, and that is you need to dump it in the river and then take it back out and clean it. So we took water that was pure enough to drink because it had been through the ultra pure procedure. And we dumped it in the river until it was not drinkable, and then we took it back out and cleaned it again. Ultra Pure is actually a product that we're hoping to sell to manufacturing companies who want a higher level of purity than what even Bull Run is. So I think technology is going to have to take us out of it. The Water District spent a lot of time and money trying to make sure that water wasn't going to be a problem. And I, like everyone else who drinks water around here, let's hope they're right. But they spent more money and we kind of stayed out of it. We just waited for them to tell us what their solution was. And it happens to be we're building roads about the same place that pipeline's going to run, and we thought, well, let's just make sure we run the pipe first before we build the roads over it. Save a little bucks, and so that's kind of our connection to it.
Okay, is there another question?
I just had one, this is backtracking just a little. It's my first time getting involved or even listening to this stuff, so if I sound stupid, that's why. Back to the, like, you were talking about trees and we were talking about development, and I just wonder, strategically, you have apparently some recalcitrant commissioners who weren't as interested in some of these aspects, is what I gather. Usually if you can find a financial reason to make that sellable, not aesthetically, not it's nice for fish, if there's a money component, if there's a way to show that economically this is better for people, for the builders, I think I don't know how much investigation there is in that, and I don't know how possible that is. But I know that's how recycling was sold initially.
Is there a question here?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
My
not
question
hearing
was,
the
have you
question.
thought about that from a financial, like, how can you make it sellable?
Well, I think we do. I think Clean Water Services has actually planted over 1 million of trees. And we give them to the landowners on the upper reaches of the stream to plant and shade the water to keep it cool. And that's cost a lot of money to give away that many trees. But the alternative was to put in giant freezer coils in the river at the outflow in order to chill that water back down. And we've discovered that by giving away trees, even though we have to buy them and give them away, that we get the same effect, and it doesn't require a dam dedicated just to those freezer coils in the river, or the expense of that. So there's an environmental way of making those trees work. That's why I was saying if we could find a way for developers to save the trees and not lose in the process, I think that will answer most of the complaints people have. You know, most people are not walking around going, a good tree is a dead tree, so we just need to give them a reason to be okay to save a tree and they can negotiate.
I think your question goes back to whether or not we can have a tree ordinance. And I believe strongly that we need to be collaborative on the commission. We need to work together, and we need to work forward on decisions together. That we need leaders who can bring our disparate views together and work together effectively so that we do what the residents of Washington County want us to do. That's the bottom line for me.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mostly directed to Pam, I think. In your work experience, what skills might you have developed to work with a board of commissioners, no matter what the makeup is this upcoming election?
Well, let's see. We can talk about being a public school teacher, we can talk about a lot of things, but I believe strongly that the skill set that I bring is this collaborative work ethic that I talked about. One of the things that I've done recently is in my role as executive director, I brought our regional government, Metro, to the table to discuss what the issues are with all of our members so that we have an open dialogue there. It's that type of behavior that we need moving forward so that we build a bigger tent, we can all come together and we can collectively decide what the best solutions are. So whether it's bringing Metro into an organization so you have the conversations and the tough conversations before you're forced to make a final decision, whether it's working on as the chair of the Beaverton Advisory Committee for the Beaverton School Bond, $680 million bond, bringing a group together to focus on what are the most important components, agree to support, and then go out with a bond that was successful. It's those types of experiences that I've had in my, I'm 66 years old. I've had a long time to build relationships and to build a backlog of experiences that bring me to a collaborative sense when I work with others. So thank you.
If I could follow up on
Yeah,
the collaboration issue too. It's very tricky when somebody comes up and says there's 5 votes, I got 3 of them, and so you can tell me what you think is a good idea, but keep it in mind. I've tried to negotiate. I've gotten some good things through. We've gotten part of the deal is we get a lot of money back from the SIP program, which, as you know, is our tax break for big companies. And frankly, most of that money that we get back was taken from the school district, which does not have a vote on it. And so my first thought was, let's give that money to the school district, what we're getting back. However, apparently we need an event center, and the voters aren't smart enough to figure it out. So we're going to use a bunch of that money. It's not really found money. The board majority thinks it's found money. I tried to talk them out of it. What I did get was millions of dollars also, as well as building that thing, for use in fixing sidewalk gaps. And that was the compromise I got. So did I vote in favor to go ahead with the event center? Yes. Because I was looking at what the public was going to get back in the way of sidewalk gap improvements. And that's no small amount of money. So, I mean, we probably have different strategies for how to work with people, but I tell you, when people show up and say there's 3 of us, this is how we want it done, your maneuvering ability is somewhat tamped down.
And I believe, frankly, that that's our job as commissioners, is to figure out a way, and I understand it's difficult, but I also understand that I've been in situations very similar to that, and you need to find a path forward, and you need to be able to work together. So that would be my commitment as a commissioner.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question. I'm afraid it's mainly directed to Mrs. Treese. Mr. Malinowski has been our commissioner for some time, and I felt that he's representing me, but because I've known him longer, I have a question for Mrs. Treese. So in your introduction, you said that you are running a nonprofit. Could you tell us what the purpose of the nonprofit is and how it relates to your effort to be a commissioner?
Sure. The name of the organization is the West Side Economic Alliance. The purpose of the organization is to ensure the economic vitality of the region. The board makeup is, we have the mayors from the 4 largest cities on the board. We have a representative from Metro that when I became executive director that I insisted that we bring on so that we have good discussions. We also have the chair of the county. The bylaws state it's not the individuals that come to the board. The bylaws state that it is the seat that comes to the board. And then the board makeup is from the private sector. So what I was saying is that this opportunity to work closely with our elected leaders has really given me a chance to see where we can combine and where we can work effectively between the private sector and the public sector. And I would go back to the earlier question about what skills do you have that would allow you to do this. That's a big piece of it, is learning how to bring those disparate groups together and come together for initiatives moving forward.
What are the 4 cities?
The largest cities in Washington County, they're Hillsborough, Beaverton, Tigard, and Tualatin. So those, and it's based on population. So the bylaws say it's the 4 largest cities.
All right. I think if we want to stay on time, we're there. So thank you very, very much. We'd let the candidates know that if they care to stay after 9 o'clock to have a personal discussion, that's up to them. But we can do that if they all agree.
I'd like to tell you thank you for organizing this, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'd like to thank everybody here.
I
Thanks.
appreciate you guys all turning up on a rainy night.
Okay. The next forum topic is Metro Council District 4. So would our candidates please come up? And we have Juan Carlos Gonzalez, and we have Dana Carson. Have you guys been at forums together so far already?
Yeah, that's it.
I
Maybe discussions.
I don't think CPO 7 had you guys last night.
No.
Okay. Well, welcome. And who goes first? Go. Oh, come on. One card. And you've got 5 minutes to introduce yourself, and then 5 minutes to answer the 3 questions. And I'll go ahead and read them now. The questions that we came up with for our Metro candidates are, how important is it for us to preserve Washington County farmland so that we can eat locally grown food? What can Metro do to encourage that? So the Metro twist on that same question. And then the routes for Washington County commuters to reach jobs in Portland are clogged and narrow. TriNet doesn't serve us well in much of the CPO area. What can Metro do to improve the situation? It was that topic of inter-county commuting that we studied a couple of years ago and never got anywhere. And then the third question is, could Metro have stepped in earlier to deal with plastic waste? What can Metro do now to prevent more plastic from going into the landfill? So, you can introduce yourself now and then have 5 minutes to talk about those.
So it'll be I open, then
Yeah,
Dana
introduce
opens.
yourself and then Dana will introduce
Okay.
himself. I'm sorry.
Excellent.
Time?
Okay. Thank you. Well, hi everyone. My name is Juan Carlos Gonzalez, and I'm running for Metro Council District 4. Before I get into anything, I want to thank you for being here. I think CPOs are a critical part of our county democracy and the process of engaging our citizens, so thank you very much. Before I get into why I'm running for Metro, I want to share a little bit about my story with you, and I think that my story is a strong element of why I'm running for Metro. I am born and raised in Cornelius, Oregon, the west end of the Metro District, and as someone that's been born and raised in Cornelius, I have had the opportunity to connect closely with organizations like Centro Cultural that serves the Latino community out there. But my family first called Cornelius home because of the ag-based work that was available there. Historically, that part of the county has had a strong presence of nurseries, of farms, of small landscaping businesses, et cetera, et cetera. And that was no different for my family. That's specifically why my dad first decided to settle there. And when we were growing up, my household was one that everyone needed to pitch into. So when I was growing up, my weekends, my summers, what would they look like? We would go to the fields, we'd work in landscaping together, and although my dad taught me how to operate a lawnmower or some type of heavy equipment at the age of 10, he was also teaching me the value of hard work and discipline and of earning your American dream every single day. But aside from that, he also wanted to teach me something else, the value of education. And and when working with my dad, he'd always say, you need to work hard. This is how we get forward in this country. So I was really lucky to find people that believed in me. And in that journey, when I got to Forest Grove High School, I was really lucky to graduate as a valedictorian. And that presented a very special opportunity for me to go to Washington, D.C., go to school at Georgetown, where I got my major in government and economics. And the special thing about going to school there was that, one, I got to learn about the world through a global perspective and connect with national politics in a way that you can only connect in if you're in D.C. Right? But even amidst all of the flashiness of D.C., of New York City, of all of those things, in my heart, I always knew I wanted to come back home. So the first thing I did was I took a job at Central Cultural, this organization that has made a difference in my family's life as we've integrated here in Washington County, but also continues to make a difference for communities of color, immigrant communities, working class families, everyone that really wants a slice of that American dream. I can't stress that enough. I work there right now, and I'm the Director of Development and Communications, so I fundraise for this organization, anything from STEM programs for youth and building private partnerships with companies to help connect our kids with world-class experiences, to developing workforce development services to help our communities tap into this prosperity and into this economic growth in the region. And also, most importantly for me, civic engagement projects that empower leadership, that help connect people with planning processes, whether it's at Metro or TriMet or at the Port of Portland. And that for me was really my turning point of when I recognized why I wanted to run for office. Not only was it in November of 2016, we all remember on the fateful night that we watched that map turn from projected blue to secured red, that we recognized, one, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? Government needs to reflect the communities it serves, and we live in a time right now where that needs to happen. And that was my call to action. That's when I knew I needed to run. Because just like my dad taught me to chip into my family, I need to chip into the future of my region. I need to work hand in hand with my community to make sure that we are reflected in the planning processes. And that's exactly what Metro does. That's Metro's primary role, to plan. So, I'm running for Metro because I believe that Metro right now can take bold and innovative decisions and take bold and innovative leadership, make decisions that will impact what our region looks like in 50 to 100 years. Right now, we are growing at a rate so quickly that our housing crisis is being exacerbated, our roads are congested, we all see this every day, and our communities are having a hard time plugging into this agency to really make sure that the region that we leave for future Oregonians is the region that we want it to be. So, the housing crisis. I want to see us continue to redevelop our underutilized or unutilized land. I think that we need to look at density, but then unsilo the housing issue and ensure that we're able to connect these communities by matching it with transportation funding. Lastly, I want to ensure that our communities of color are reflected in the planning processes and that we're able to lift voices that have been historically marginalized in this region. That's the kind of region I want to leave for the future, and that's why I'm here, because I want to earn your vote, I want to earn your support, and I want the Metro region to be the best region it can be for everyone, regardless of income, regardless of race, regardless of where you come from. That's the kind of Portland I want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana?
My name is Dana Carstensen. A little bit about my backstory also. I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. When my parents got divorced in '97, I decided to move down to Oregon with my mom. Graduated high school in Grover Cleveland, southeast Portland. After that, I had a choice. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I decided I'd either join the Marine Corps or put myself through college. talked to my brother, who is a rock veteran, and I decided I want to go to college, and he was supportive of it. So I went to PCC, where I got my Associate's of Arts and transfer degree, and paid my way through it. And after I graduated there, I decided, okay, time to take the next step. Where am I going to transfer to? So I transferred down to the University of Oregon, where I quickly learned that I wanted to become a planner. So I earned my degree in planning public policy management from one of the best programs in the country, from the University of Oregon. I quickly learned doing that program, and I even studied Metro specifically under former Metro Councilor Carl Hatsuka, that I wanted to become a public servant. So as soon as I graduated and moved right back on up to Portland, I became a Metro employee. I started out at the Oregon Zoo to get my foot in the door. I'm currently still an employee at the Oregon Zoo as a temp, because all you need to do is work one shift a year and you're on the books. But during my time there, I became heavily involved with Metro internally. I became a union shop steward, a union organizer, and I negotiated a labor contract representing 500-600 union employees, the poorest workers of all Metro, where they're making near minimum wage, on food stamps, selling their plasma, and I got them sick days before it became state law. I got them raises, I got them cost of living adjustments, I got them grievance rights. It was a huge success. But that meant I had to work extremely close with Metro and their internal politics to get things done. Those things I just got those people cost millions of dollars. It was not easy, but we managed to bargain out a fair contract. So now, a few years later, I'm now a hazardous waste technician at their Oregon City plant, and I see an opportunity. I see an opportunity with Catherine being turned out to become a servant leader instead of just a public servant. With my 5 years of experience with Metro, my degree in planning, public policy, and management, my desire to be a public servant and a servant leader, I want to take a step forward because I have concerns. I have concerns about the affordable housing crisis because we're growing so fast. I have concerns about our congestion across the region. I have concerns about our hazardous waste management. That's all I think about because I'm a planner. And I want to give back to the community by becoming your next Metro Councilor. To do any of that, though, I need to get elected first, so that's why I'm here. Thank you so much for being here. So yeah, let's get talking. Thanks, Anne.
Okay. Juan Carlos, you want to take a crack at our 3 questions?
So we have our 3 questions. Before I answer each question, I'll make sure to repeat the basic elements of each question. So the first question talks about how are we going to encourage Metro to preserve farmland for us to be able to continue to grow food locally. Now, Metro, this is one of Metro's primary roles as an urban planning agency, and our role is to ensure that our region has an adequate land supply for 20 years. The biggest steps that Metro has taken in the last 10 years is establishing a system of urban reserves and rural reserves. And that system is our best stab right now at how we can plan for land that can be brought into the region in a short amount of time versus land that can be protected for an extended amount of time. I support the system. I think the system is critically important to the way that we look at our farmland, the way that we preserve our farmland. And what we have right now in the region as well is a deficit of 40 to 50,000 units of housing. And at the rate that we're growing right now, that deficit continues to grow every year. So not only do we need to look at how we can control our land supply to ensure that we preserve our farmland, but also basic things like watersheds that feed into the Tualatin River, or how we can protect natural spaces and natural areas that people can visit and connect with nature in the way that we need to. But at the same time, that land must be considered responsibly if we're going to expand. The next question talks about what we can do to improve commutes in the region. Well, I think that we need to continue working with Metro's 2040 comprehensive growth plan, which looks at urban centers, which looks at town centers, which looks at main transportation corridors. And what I think we need to do is not only invest more in public transportation and offer more dynamic type of services, not only do we need to increase the frequency of our bus services, we need to change routes to ensure that TriMet isn't just so east-west in our county, but also goes into neighborhoods in a way that connects our urban cores, our town centers, our community centers, as identified by Metro. Because what we want to do is we want to grow a region in which we have pockets of density, we have pockets of community centers, and I think we need to plan about how we can continue to connect those over time. The last question talks about what Metro can do for plastics. Now, this is personally one of my favorite things that we can jump into. As we know, we can no longer ship our plastics to China. I think this presents a very special opportunity for Metro to take on leadership here. What I would propose and what I want to work with Metro counselors, and I already know staff are beginning to consider this, the planning staff inside Metro, about what we can do, is we can lead the country in building an insular type of recycling industry here in Portland, where the plastics that we use here are processed here, remanufactured here, and we can also increase regulations to make sure that the plastics that we do pump into the system have a smart exit strategy. I think that's really important for anything that we sell here in the region. A fun fact is that of all of the waste that we create as a region, more than 30% of that waste comes from construction waste. So when you think about a third of the things that we're putting into our garbage, it's conglomerates of cement, of metal pipe, of wood, all of these things that we're just throwing away into the landfill. I think that problem, paired together with something like a smart plastic strategy in which we have a good exit strategy for these things, is we build things when we know what we're going to do with them when we want to throw them away. And I think Metro can not only simplify the process, create a more equitable process where people can access this system across the region, because what we see right now is that you can live in one part of the county, one part of the region, but you don't get the same level of service. So one, at the core of it, is consistent service across the region, but also a forward-thinking system that can create jobs here, that can create a layer of manufacturing, that can process plastics, and therefore probably be a model for the future.
All right, farmland. That is a heavy-duty one. Comes to the urban growth boundary. So we need to protect the urban growth boundary so it doesn't expand to farmland. How are we going to do that? I think Metro is a tool of the local governments. I think Metro should be used as a tool to figure out where we can really go with Craig, is use the infrastructure that's already been invested in so we can actually increase, rezone it and rebuild that, wasted infrastructure. If we're having pipes and water and, say 26 and those main arterial lines and electricity lines, and they're not being fully utilized, but we've already spent billions of dollars in the infrastructure, we need to actually go in there, rezone it, and build in there, so we don't have to go into the farmland. We need to actually relook at what we already have to better utilize what we've already invested in. If we don't, Metro as a regional entity can do that. It's a research entity. We can look at the whole map and see, okay, hey guys, you have all this area, you can do this. How can we help you? How can we be your tool to make this happen in a more cost-efficient way, so we don't have to expand the urban growth boundary? When it comes to public transportation and the massive congestion we're seeing because we're growing at 1.75%, I'm proposing to help China electrify their bus fleet, mainly because if we start electrifying our bus fleet, and if we have a fully electric bus fleet right now, we save about $100 million in fuel and maintenance costs over 12 years. What can we do with $100 million? Quite a bit. Do you want more bus lanes? We can have more bus lanes. Do you want to increase the fleet by 10%? Let's increase the fleet by 10%. Do you want to add different routes? Let's add different routes. But if you don't have the money, we can't do any of that. That's why I'm proposing we start transitioning. As a diesel bus expires, just replace it with an electric bus, a battery-operated one, because it's going to save us money. We can, use that money to reinvest somewhere else. And also, we need to start figuring out, instead of building all these housing, say like Bethany, thousands of new units, but just one road. So we're forcing all people to go down that road, and I'm sure many people have been on that road, and they're just congested. But we're forcing everybody to live in that one spot and commute to a different area. We need to start mixing it up. Little Renko station there, little Renko station over here. Add different options so people aren't forced into one area. We need to diversify what kind of land we use, or properties we use. If you specialize in one type of zone, you're going to have extremely problematic issues such as transportation congestion. When it comes to plastics and recycling, it's not going to get any better. Unfortunately, China is never going to start rebuying our plastics. It's unfortunately, nationally, 9% of all product is recycled, and the odds of having a recycled product recycled again is less than 1%. That's why I'm proposing, and this is under Metro's charters, waste management, it's a waste-to-energy system. We can take all that waste, which is about 1.4 million US tons of trash every single year, and turn it into electricity. We recycle it and we turn it into electricity. We could produce enough electricity to provide 15 to 20% of the energy needs for the entire region. And I'm proposing it via a method that isn't incineration, so it's cleaner. So we get oil, natural gas, and carbon, which we could then use into our agricultural fields to improve productivity. Another reason to keep our urban growth boundary where it is and save our farms. But cleaner, we're trucking all of our waste 150 miles to Arlington right now, so it'd be cleaner air because we're not using diesel trucks to do it. Cheap electricity, good for our agriculture, lots of jobs, and we don't have 250,000 tons of plastic being thrown into the environment every year. I think that's a win-win. So.
All right, now we have time to take questions from the audience. Go ahead.
Well, there's so many questions that we could ask and address. I'll just focus on one, roads and transportation. Maybe both of you could elaborate